All right, surprise! For those of you that didn't see my video yesterday, we're shaking things up in terms of my release schedule. I got really sick at the beginning of December, so I wanted this video to come out earlier this week or even last week, but things being the way that they were, I couldn't speak. I could barely get out of bed. So yeah, I had to move and shift some things and be okay with that because I do not like missing a deadline. And even though I was the one that set the deadline, I still don't like missing those deadlines. So we are here talking about my favorite epics of 2024. Epics I love. This is why I come to progressive rock. This is why I love music. And I have a little bit of a stricter criteria than some of my contemporaries. I know Nathan on Shuffle, Scott at the Prog Corner, and Ian over at Rhyme Signatures. They all have done their own list. Now, normally, in my mind, an epic is anything that's past 20 minutes. I had to be a little bit lax on my curriculum, on my rubric here. So I've actually decreased the time to 17 minutes or more. There are a few on here that just squeak by that 17-minute mark, but it needs to be 17 minutes. I'm also being a little bit of a stickler. I am not including those that are chopped up. So there are 4 kind of honorable mentions that I have on here. So Beardfish Out in the Open from Songs for Beating Hearts. That's not on here because it's split up between 4 or 5 tracks. Same with Caligula's Horse, their Charcoal Grace suite that they have on there. It's all broken up. Same with Frost, Life in the Wires. The song is actually kind of doing a Shine on You Crazy Diamond, where part of the song is at the first half of the record. The second one is near the end. And finally, Dilemma with the Purpose Paradox. That one kind of it didn't quite meet the 17-minute marker. So those tracks aren't going to be on here because I needed to be a little bit more of a stickler. Otherwise, this list would go out of control. So I've narrowed it down to 10. And I've got 3 honorable mentions, proper honorable mentions. And the only reason why they didn't make it onto the list themselves is that they didn't quite feel like epics into of themselves, and I want people to check them out. So that's why I want to talk about them right at the beginning. The Velvet Pony put out an amazing record that I was introduced to last week. And they have a 20-minute track called Sludge on it. It's an absolute mind trip. Go and check it out. Colin Stenson, one of my favorite Canadian artists. He is basically just a one-man band with his saxophone, and he just has everything mic'd. So a lot of the percussion is literally him tapping on the keys. He has this amazing breathe-through technique that a lot of bagpipers use, and it just almost has this continuous drone going on. He put out an amazing record, and on that record this year, he has a 20-minute track called Strike Your Forge and Grin. Just an amazing trip. It's a little bit more ambient. It's a little bit more atmospheric than it is like a full solidified track. And finally, Solaris put out a massive record that isn't available really anywhere. I couldn't really find it. I had to find it on YouTube. And I was only able to listen to the first track off of the album. And that is the first suite of Zoo Galactica. And it's fine. It's a little rough, if I'm being honest. I see on Prog Archives that it's really high up there in terms of the rating. I think it's rough, it's pretty rough. So I'd be interested to hear the rest of the album because I was only able to listen to that first track because the second, there's basically only 3 tracks, 2 20-minute tracks and then a 30 or 40-minute track. I'm really excited to listen to the whole album itself, but damned if I could find it. So yeah, that's why I wanted to put it on the honorable mentions. Okay, I've talked about this for almost 5 minutes now. Let's get into the actual big epics proper. Now, I'll have the album that the track is from over here because I very rarely talk about singular tracks. And the first one I want to talk about, number 10, we're talking about Versa and their Artemis track from A Voyage, A Destination Part 2. I know a lot of my contemporaries love this record and love A Voyage, A Destination Part 2. I am very indebted to the band because they actually sent me the full album, the full voyage, as they like to call it, of Part 1 and Part 2. I'm not a big fan of this record, if I'm being honest. I wasn't a big fan of the first one either. And the only reason why I didn't do a review of it was I feel like all my contemporaries, Nathan, Ian, and Scott, they were really praising this record and really saying some really amazing things about it. I just find I'm not connecting to this record as much as all my contemporaries do. And even with the big epic that's on here with Artemis, it's fine and I have a really good time with it. There's just something that I don't connect to quite as much with this record. But the final, one of the final tracks on here was a lot of fun. It's, over 17 minutes, which makes it qualify for this list. And it was a good time. Next up at number 9 is Beneath the Masts from Big Big Train from their album The Likes of Us. This album, it didn't age as well as I was hoping to. Like the first 3 tracks, everything leading up to Beneath the Masts, one of the best run of music that we've got from Big Big Train pretty much since the English Electric, But after that, the album kind of falters. Now, I still love Beneath the Masts. It has a lot of my favorite stylings of music. Genesis is my favorite band, and there's a lot of copy and paste from that, especially the early Genesis from like Trespass and Nursery Crime. I love the build-up. I love the payoff. Unlike a lot of Big Big Train's epics, I feel like this actually has a destination, because I feel like a lot of their big epics that we've got from them, they kind of wander the landscape without really knowing where to go. And this was one of the few that I felt like the ending actually had a purpose. It actually built to something. And I really enjoyed that. So it really well earned the number 9 spot. Number 8, we have Azure and their track Trench of Nalu from Fim. This one, it's not a really great standalone track. It really only works in the context of the record itself. And this record really is a great time. It kind of has that same flow that I feel like a lot of contemporary and modern prog bands have. It's kind of got that like Co-Eating Cambria feel, that the Deer Hunter feel, kind of like the Reign of Kindo feel on it. But, it's a really good time. And I feel like these guys kind of rose above a lot of what was being put out this year in this same kind of vein. And I really enjoyed myself. Once again, I feel like this was kind of wandering the landscape, but like the journey that we fell on here was really good. It's just with these epics, I like a really big, meaty payoff. I want the justification for the runtime. And this one kind of had it, but I was also kind of waiting for something more. Moving on to number 7, we have Aquilus with Nigh to Her Gloam from Bellum 2. Bellum 2 really surprised me this year. It's got some really, really deep prog metal on there, some really great twists and turns, and this is the highlight for me on that record. I really love like where this goes. I love the aggression that's paired with more of the mellow side of things, because a death metal band is only really as good as its more mellow parts, because any band can come on here and just, blow the doors down with blast beats and screaming and whatnot. But it's really those more intimate moments that I really attach myself to. So yeah, this one really surprised me, and it was one that I kind of kept coming back to throughout the year. Another one that I kept coming back to was Haven of Echoes. Their first record I wasn't all that excited for. I felt like it was just kind of like wandering landscape. But yeah, this one from Memento Vivere really, really surprised me. And this track kind of kicked the whole album off with a 17-minute epic of No Sum No Curo. Really enjoyed this one. Has some great build-ups, has some great payoffs. It's reminded me of like really early Gazpacho, some really deep Anathema kind of feelings as well. Kind of like We're Here Because We're Here from Anathema, or like a Firebird from Gazpacho, or even Night. Like Night opened up with that huge like 17-minute thing. And that's kind of what I'm feeling on this one as well. So this one kind of showed me that, I actually kind of like Haven of Echoes. I still feel like they have some room to grow, and I'm really looking forward to whatever they do for their third release. But this was a great one. All right, moving on to number 5. Let's talk about John Anderson with his record this year. Really surprised me, really blew me away. This was Once Upon a Dream. It's really channeling that classic Yes stylings that he was doing a lot within like kind of the mid to late 70s, from like Tales of Topographic Ocean, Relayer, and more specifically probably his Going for the One as well as paired very well with a lot of stuff that he was doing with Vangelis. This was one of the best Yes records that we've gotten within probably the last 2 decades, probably since Magnification. And just some of the best work that we've gotten from John in a very long time. So yeah, it kind of like, this is probably my favorite, like my second favorite record from John Anderson. Like nothing's going to touch Sun Hillow, but yeah, this one's a pretty close second. All right, moving on to number 4, coming into the top 4, we've got Blood Incantation. Now, Blood Incantation with their Absolute Elsewhere, either track, because it's really only 2 tracks, either track could have been fit on here, but for me, it's the first one of the Stargate that I really like. I like more of the kind of atmospheric Tangerine Dream sections that we have on here. I love those mellow side of things a little bit more. And once, I fell in love with Blood Incantation with their last record, Time Vaporwave or something along those lines, like the very atmospheric, very ambient sound. Absolutely love that one. And this one kind of, blended what they were doing with the evolution of the human race or something along those lines. Kind of blended those 2 factions of the band together. For me, it didn't quite blend as much as I was hoping. There's a lot of, oil and water going on in that, but it was still quite good, and I still really enjoyed kind of passage to passage to passage on there. So yeah, Blood Incantation, the Stargate, really love that one. Coming into the top 3, number 3 for me is Neil Morse with his No Hill for a Climber from No Hill for a Climber. I could have very easily put the first track from No Hill for a Climber on here as well, but I don't know, there's just something about that title track. It's very Kaleidoscope from Transatlantic. And in fact, Kaleidoscope is a perfect kind of like 1-to-1. Those 2 records of No Hill for a Climber and Kaleidoscope, very, very similar. This is Neil going back to his prog roots. And I just absolutely loved it. Again, either track from this record really could have been on this list at this spot. But the title track for me, a little bit longer, a little bit more epic. I do think that they probably could have shaved about 4 minutes off of it and it wouldn't have lost a whole lot. But I still love that big grand sound at the end. There's nobody doing these big sounds within this kind of retro prog like Neil Morse. There's a reason why a lot of people have crowned him as king. All right, last 2. Let's talk about Eons with their Ghosts track from The Ghost of What We Knew. This was a late addition to me. This one I found on my buddy Ian. He was the one that recommended it to me when I was like, hey, what are some good epics this year? Because if I'm being perfectly honest, this year didn't have a whole lot of really great epics. But he was just like, no, you got to check out Ghost from Aeon. And I did. And man, what a treat. What an absolute treat. It's got that progressive death metal that I absolutely love. It's got a little bit more of the teeth to it. It's a little bit more aggressive without it just being a carbon copy of something that came before. Absolutely love this one. Lots of fun. Lots of ebbs and flows. And I really like that final play out of this track. So, okay, number one, we're going to Elmo. This one really hit me. This is Reconciliation from the album Reconciliation, the title track. Man, this was one of my favorite tracks of the year. This was a track that I kept coming back to time and time and time again. And it's the perfect kind of epic where the first time I listened to it, I liked it, but I was hoping for more. I was like, if only they just had that little extra spice. But then the more I listened to it, the more I realized, it's just fine the way it is. And the more I grew to appreciate it. And that is what I love about progressive rock and progressive metal. Now, a lot of people could say that this is a carbon copy from Haken or Between the Buried and Me, and they wouldn't be wrong. But when both of those bands haven't put out an epic in quite a while, hey, I'm going to take what I can get. And yeah, these guys were really doing something special this year. This one was very easily my favorite track of the year and my favorite epic of the year. It was doing everything that I wanted to. It's got that immediately recognizable and catchy chorus that gets repeated throughout the runtime of this track, and each time it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's what I love about these big epics. It's the coming together of that big, meaty oomph. And that's where I'm going to leave it. Elmo, number one for the best epic of the year. Very well earned, and like the gap between number one and number two was quite substantial. For most other years, especially within like the albums, it's like, number one could have been any of these tracks. Now, there was quite a big gulf between number one and number two. So yeah, Elmo wins that very easily. And there you go. Those are my favorite epics of 2024. Let me know some of your favorite epics of the year. Which ones did I miss? Which ones did I snub? Let me know all about that by commenting down below. You don't have to necessarily keep as rigid a curriculum or rigid as, aspects, shall we say, as I did, where it had to be one singular song, not split up across a bunch of tracks, and it didn't necessarily need to be 17 minutes. But for me, anything prior or less than 15 minutes, I'm like, nah, that's not an epic. For me, an epic has to be over 20 minutes. That's my usual credentials for it. But because so many tracks this year didn't quite hit that 20-minute mark, I didn't want to completely, cap myself at the knees because of my usual sticklerness of that. But yeah, anything before 15 minutes, that's a mini epic. From 9 to 15 minutes, that's a mini epic. 15 to 20 minutes for me, that's kind of like we're starting to get to an epic, and then anything past 20 minutes is a full-on epic. So those are mine. Once again, let me know of your own. If you agreed about mine, if you didn't, let me know about that by commenting down below. That's where I'm going to leave it today. So I hope you guys are excited for next week. Next week, we've got the full lists. The week after that, we've got some fun lists. So I hope you guys will follow along that. I hope my voice recovers so that you don't hear me in this weird grovelly voice like I'm having right now. I'm going to be drinking a lot of water because I'm going to just bang out the ones for next week, take a break, and I'll come back for the ones for the week after that. So yeah, anyways, hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys are staying safe. Hope you guys are having a great holiday season. I hope you guys are having a great time and you're really getting into the festivities. And yeah, so for now, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.